What is going on, all my bourbon and boxing fans, man? Welcome back to another episode 41. I am your host, Jeff, and we're going to call this one the Battle in the Great White North, baby, as we're going to get a battle up in Canada this weekend, Quebec City, if I'm correct, Quebec City, Canada. We're going to get Beterbiev versus Smith in a lightweight title fight. It's got three belts on the line, the WBO, the WBC, and the IBF belt, all on the line. And it also holds a little bit more, as the winner of this could get the opportunity for an undisputed fight against Demetrius Bivol, guys. Come on, man. Doesn't get any better than that. That's a big-time fight, guys. So if you're a boxing fan, let's tune in Saturday for that fight. I'm going to break that fight down for you. Give me my opinion, who I think is going to win, who I favor in that fight, and like we said, what the consequences of losing and what could happen if you win. So let's jump into that, but not until we have a little sip of our bourbon, and we also break down our bourbon of the week. The bourbon of the week, guys, I've got something I consider really, really special. It's a very historical bourbon, guys. Been around since 1934. You can't say much more than that, historical-wise. I mean, a long time, long-lasting bourbon that's been through a little bit of adversity, only to come back even stronger, even bigger, and even better, and just continues to be the number one selling bourbon in Kentucky for year after year after year. This year, I had to try it. I had to give it a try. Heaven Hill, guys. That is our bourbon of the week. I'm going to give you guys a review on that. We're going to break it down for you. I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it. I'm going to give you a backstory on it, like I said, with our new segment, Bourbon of the Week, guys. That's got a nice, good, strong taste to it, guys, that I do enjoy. Got a little burn going on. You can definitely taste the spices in it, man. But hey, let's get into this bourbon, man. Let's talk about it a little bit. Uh, its classification is straight bourbon. Company, Heaven Hill. Distillery, Heaven Hill. Uh, Release date for this bourbon was 2019. It's 100 proof. Aged 7 years. Mash bill, 78% corn. 12% malted barley, and 10% rye, guys. Uh, it's got a medium amber color, as you can see. Price is around $50. Not a bad price on it. A lot better than what I talked about in Angel's Envy last week. I did not like the price on that one. I think this price matches up pretty well with this bourbon, guys. All right, I told you a little bit about that. Let's get into the backstory. Now, when I say this bourbon has a lot of history, I had to leave a lot of stuff out that I couldn't cover. So, no wrong. I hope I didn't do the company any wrongdoing, but I kind of skimmed through, took out some of the best parts to cut it down to where it wasn't too long. But I definitely wanted to get into the history of this bourbon without, delving too deep in. But man, this is a historic bourbon, guys. The history behind it is just really awesome to hear the story that this company, how they started, and then where they went to, the adversity that they faced in '96, what they went through with that. We'll get into that and much more as I break this down, the backstory of Heaven Hill, guys. Here we go. In 1934, the Sharpine family, who were known more as department store retailers, guys, they owned a bunch of department stores, big into that. They were approached by investors for startup money. $17,000 is what they were asked to put up to help start a distillery, so they agreed, and the original Heaven Hills Distillery was built. December 13th, 1935, the first barrel was filled. 4 years later, after properly aged, the first bottle was released. Old Heaven Hill bottle in bond bourbon. In 1937, Sharpia's bought out the investors for $20,000. For $20,000, they bought out the investors pretty much that had dealt in. The story behind it was, of course, you got to let bourbon age. You're not just going to open a distillery and sell bourbon the next year. If you're doing it in 1935, your first barrel, it's going to take at least a few years, 4 years sometimes, to age it properly. So the investors, the Sharpies, the story is that the family, the original family, they had the money from their retail stores to say, okay, we can sit back and wait for this to happen because we have money coming in. Now, the investors obviously didn't. So they approached the Sharpias. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, probably butchering it. I apologize. But they approached them and said, hey, would you like to buy us out $20,000? They said, hey, let's do it. And then that's when they said that we really knew that we were going to delve headfirst into this bourbon thing, that we weren't just going to do it. We were going to do it full time now. After buying the company for $20,000. Now, where they were really smart, uh, they brought in Earl Beam, the Beam family, the Jim Beam family helped them distill and master. They brought in Earl Beam, who was the master distillery for 29 years for Heaven Hills, also known for the Jim Beam family bourbon. He was part of that, and they helped Heaven Hill. They still, to this day, I think, have help. They still help because even when what's his name here, Earl Beam retired, his son took over as the distiller for Heaven Hill. So it continued as the Beams helping them, who's well known for bourbon, great at what they do. Uh, so to bring those guys in, really smart, and that shows you business smart on that family. Once again, Sharpias. I want to pronounce the name right, but probably not. The making of Heaven Hill, let's see, also known as the Jim Beam family bourbon. This making Heaven Hill Kentucky's number one selling bourbon, guys, and I think still is to this day. It was number one selling bourbon last year and the year before that, if I'm correct, for Kentucky. How it slipped by me, I don't know, but I am new into the bourbon game. Only about maybe less than a year in, just really kind of delving into bourbons and stuff like that. So, of course, I wouldn't know much about it. In 1996, the company faced adversity. This is what I was talking about, the adversity that they had faced. And they faced a little bit of adversity with what is known today as the Flaming Whiskey Fires. These fires caused by a bad storm in 1996 where we had winds up to 70 miles an hour down in Kentucky down there. Heavy winds and bad storms taking out 15% of their storage, losing $30 million in whiskey and facilities. Guys, $30 million they lost in 1996. Now, if you're most companies, losing 15% of your storage is really going to hurt you. And, how do you recover from that? They didn't lay off one single employee, and 92,000 barrels of whiskey was lost. Now, they had a bunch of other whiskey bourbon companies reach out to them and say, hey, we're going to help you guys as much help as you need, helping to, also get their bourbon out and stuff like that for them. So they did have a little bit of help with some other companies. And then in 99, Heaven Hill bought out a distillery, Burnham, with the triple capacity as Bardstown. So they were now able to go back to originally making their own bourbon and not having to depend on other people. So in 99, buying a new facility that was twice the size of the facility that they had. Triple the size, actually, is what it says. And then in 2007, they were yielding 200,000 barrels annually a year. 2017, they added 3 more fermentation tanks along with a third shift production. And then it rose up to 300,000 barrels. Since then, they have only grown even larger. This bourbon is rich in history, guys. When I say even larger, they added more to where now they're producing, I want to say, over 400,000 barrels of whiskey a year, guys, annually. I don't know if that's yearly, annually the whole year, but yeah, yearly, 400,000 barrels of whiskey. That is amazing. And the history behind it, starting in 1934 from a retail department store family that didn't know anything about bourbon. And they just said, hey, yeah, why not? We see it as something big in the future. They saw something in it. They agreed to it. Bought out the original investors who couldn't hold on and hang in. They understood the business too, and that's what really impresses me is how they were retail store people, didn't know much about bourbon, but they understood the aging process of the bourbon, and that they weren't going to be able to sell it the next year if they wanted to sell good, great bourbon. And they originally, this is a new bill that just came out. They originally had one 2016 brand. I don't know. I've been hearing a lot about it. That was the original brand, 6-year age. Yeah, that's what it was. The 6-year age, which they no longer make, and then they went to the 7-year age. But, man, like I said, this bourbon is just super rich in history, man. as I just told you, going all the way back to 1934 and still existing today. Here's my thoughts and my ratings on it. This bourbon is not only rich in history, but in taste as well. It's everything I enjoy in a bourbon. The oak and the spice immediately burst on contact. As soon as it hits your tongue, you taste that oak, that spice. Boom, just a banging, unbelievable flavor with a balance of a little butterscotch is what I'm tasting in there myself on the back taste of it. It's just the right amount of not really sweetness. It's not over caramelized, anything like that. Just a great flavor. Flavors are put together just right. I give Heaven Hill 100 on my score of must try bourbons. The buzz is just right over ice, and sipping is preferred. That's me, man. This is my thoughts on Heaven Hill. I give it 100 because this is a great bourbon. The history behind it and the taste alone, it's just rich in history and taste. Like I said, guys, it's a must try. Heaven's Hill gets 100 on my list. Great job, guys, and I will definitely be purchasing more Heaven's Hill. If you want to send me some free Heaven's Hill, I would appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Take any free bourbon. And maybe we'll see. No, free is always good. But anyways, guys, that was my review on the bourbon of the week, man. Let's take another sip of bourbon and let's jump into reviewing this big fight coming up on Saturday. What the consequences mean for both fighters, who are, one's up there in age and one needs to prove himself. So there's a lot on the line for both of them. But before we jump in that, man, let's take another sip of this delicious bourbon, Heaven Hill. Woo! All right, Saturday's main event, like I said, is Arthur Beterbiev, and he's going to be going up against Colin Smith. Beterbiev is a really super heavy punching guy. He has, if I'm correct, he's only got like 19 pro fights, but he's got like 300 amateur fights, guys. He's 38 years old, so he's not a young guy. You would think 19 fights, he's probably like 20. No, he's 38 years old. Uh, and he's going to be the older fighter. And obviously, in this fight, I think Colin Smith is like 29, something like that. So the question is with Beterbiev, we know what he brings to the table. We know how good he is. Is age going to catch up to him at some point? Is that something we have to worry about? I don't think we worry about that in this fight. I watched Colin Smith against Canelo. He took a lot of punches. He didn't go back. He didn't really punch back as much. He was attacked and played a lot of defense and lost that fight to Canelo. I think Beterbiev, being the heavier puncher than Canelo is going to be able to take Smith out with a heavy punch at some point in this fight. Not saying it's going to happen early. I think it's going to be around the mid-round, 7th, 8th, 9th round, when he wears him down a little bit and then he starts to, really bring the pressure onto him. Beterbiev is great for bringing pressure, bringing heavy punches, combinations going to the body. He's a great fighter. But like I said, 300 amateur fights, 19 pro fights. He is a power puncher. Smith isn't bad himself. He's a power puncher, too. He's got like 20-something knockouts under his belt. He's only got the one loss to Canelo, but he really hasn't been challenged outside of Canelo. So this will be his biggest challenge, in my opinion. I think it's a bigger challenge than Canelo. And what's on the line for these two guys, man? It's plain and simple. An undisputed light heavyweight championship fight is on the line with Bivol, who I think that could be put on in Saudi Arabia and make really good money. Outside of that, I don't think the casuals are going to know enough about these guys to really sell that fight as a premier pay-per-view fight. But as real true fans, we're going to tune in, and if it's a pay-per-view fight, I'm definitely going to pay for that, no doubt about it. But like I said, I think this fight, just what's on the line, I think more on the line for Beterbiev, who's the more proven, like pretty much a more proven fighter. And he's been begging for the Bivol fight, and he's got 3 of the belts, so he's pretty much the main guy in that light heavyweight division. So he really wants to prove that against Bivol, who everybody is saying is the top guy because he beat Canelo. So Bivol really, Beterbiev really wants to prove himself in this fight so he can get that fight against Bivol and then prove himself against Bivol, who's considered one of the better boxers. I wasn't really impressed with his last outing versus Arthur. forgot that his last fight against Arthur. I can't remember the guy's last name. Maybe it was Arthur was his last name. I'm not sure. But his last fight, he looked all right, but then he just wasn't able to finish him off. So I don't know. I would favor Beterbiev against Bivol, even though I think Bivol might be a better boxer overall. But I don't know, man. Beterbiev is a really good, talented guy. I think he's going to showcase that Saturday. He's going to wear Smith down and then take him out in the later rounds. Applying the pressure like he does, and let's see how Smith holds up to the pressure. Smith thinks that, hey, man, I've watched Beterbiev. I think I know what I can do against him. I think I know what I need to do. So let's see what happens, man. It's boxing. Anything can happen, guys. One punch is all it takes sometimes in boxing, one punch. So, but like I said, I'm going to favor Beterbiev in that fight. I've been wrong before, but I'm going to go with the favorite. Obviously, if you want to make some money, go with Smith. And if he happens to pull the upset, you might make pretty good money on that. I'm pretty sure it's a pretty, high stake. You're not going to make anything off Beterbiev, who is the favorite, obviously. But the undercard on that is a pretty good undercard. You got the Jason Maloney versus Saul Sanchez fight. This fight is for the WBO bantamweight title held by Jason Maloney. And Maloney, the Maloney brothers, great fighters out of Australia. Always like to watch them fight. They always put on a good fight. And Saul Sanchez, I don't know much about him, but I'm pretty sure I've seen him. Tough fighter. So that's going to be a great fight for the WBO bantamweight title. That is going to be the co-main event on that card. And then you got Christian Mabil versus Rohan Murdoch, which is going to be another good fight. Bill is a undefeated fighter at 25-0. And he's young, he's hungry, he's ready to prove himself. So this is an opportunity on a stage against Murdoch, who I want to say is 27-2. He's got a couple losses, but he hasn't lost in a while. He lost once, went on a 20-fight win streak, then previously lost a couple years ago, and now has been on a win streak once again. So he's going to come in hot and ready to fight McBill, Christian McBill, who he could make a name against, but McBill could also now show people and showcase his talent. He's a really good fighter, I think. Then you got Imam Kotev versus Rodolfo Gomez Jr. So don't know much about those two guys, but hey, I'm going to tune in to watch that for sure. Here's a little bit of fight info for you guys. The start time is going to be at 10 p.m. Eastern time, guys, over here in the States. Like I said, it's up in Quebec City, Canada, and the Videotron Center is where you're going to catch that fight. It's going to be Saturday, January 13th. It's going to be on ESPN Plus / Sky Sports, ESPN also. You can catch it on both R3 of those networks. Over in the UK, it's going to be Sky Sports. And then, like I said, location Videotron Center, Quebec City, Canada for that fight. That's why I call this the battle in the Great White North, because we all know it's colder than shit up there in Canada, guys. So, Great White North. Anyways, man, a little bit of boxing news. There's quite a bit of boxing news this week, man. The one thing I think I kind of want to jump into first is the Errol Spence situation, where he has now had surgery on his eye, which is obviously going to delay the Crawford fight even longer. This, I don't get why it wasn't done immediately. If him claiming that he had eye issues before the fight started, Crawford saying, well, that's funny because they check our eyes before the fight, all that kind of stuff. So he's calling bull crap. He's also claiming that he had hurt ribs going into the fight. I'm not with the excuses. I just think Crawford dominated the guy. But the fact is, if your eye was in that condition, you should have had the surgery immediately after. Maybe the damage already done to the eye didn't allow that to happen, and it had to heal before he could go into surgery, and I get all that. But once again, this is something that's going to delay a fight that everybody is wanting to see and get out of the way so that Crawford or Spence can go on to fight. Spence at 154 move up, and then Crawford go fight maybe a Boots Ennis or a Teofimo Lopez, who's calling him out for a fight. But, man, hearing Spence say that, hey, my eye wasn't good, that's why he was able to hit me, and then now, Spence is coming out. It's kind of two ways. In 1 minute, he's saying that, hey, he only beat me because I was injured, and then now he's going out and saying, hey, he should have been Fighter of the Year for what he did, even if it was against me, giving him a little bit of credit. But Crawford's not really buying any of it, man. He's like, look, we get eye exams before this happens, so I'm not buying this crap. My personal opinion is excuses. I understand you probably weren't able to get that eye done immediately, But now this pushes this fight back even further. You guys were disagreeing on the weight that you wanted to fight the next fight at, so that was holding it up. At that caused it not to happen. Now you just had surgery on your eye. Who knows how long that's going to take for you to heal? And then when you're able to actually go back into a ring and take damage to that eye, I think that's going to be a big if thing. If can Spence even? This is the second time he's had surgery on that eye. Can he continue boxing? Because you don't think Crawford's going to go in there and do the exact same thing to that eye that he did before, and then you're going to have a third surgery on that eye. That can't be healthy for you. And I know everybody's, he waved off the retirement thing. No way I'm going to retire. I love the sport of boxing, and I get that you love the sport, you want to continue to fight. You definitely don't want to go out with a loss like that to Spence and then never continue your career again. I could see that not wanting to be the end of your career, but at the same time, you got to think about your health, your eyesight, your future, your kids, your wife, all that kind of stuff, man, and how it you damage yourself to the point to where you can't ever see out of that eye again. 3 surgeries on one eye, that cannot be good, guys. Uh, he's got enough money to retire. We know that. So it's like, why not? If you have to walk away from the sport, people are going to understand it's going to suck. It's going to be like Barry Sanders almost walking away from the sport of football at a young age, and it's going to suck to see a guy's career cut short. But I also don't want to see a guy go out there and take another beating on that eye the way he did, and then have to go out there and possibly have surgery that might take that eye completely, man. I mean, it's just too much on the line. I think it's time for both of these guys to move on from each other, in my opinion. As much as everybody would love to see Spence Crawford too, I would love for them to move on so that we can get them, at least get Crawford back in the ring before 2025. I don't want to be held up, and then we don't see this guy till October of 2024. I definitely want to see Crawford in the ring a couple times this year, so I think he should be allowed, while Spence is healing, he should be allowed to take another fight, and that's what he needs to do. And that's what I would like to see him do, take another fight so that he can, stay active, stay busy. Don't let this one fight stagnate him like it has for years already. We also got Inoue announced versus Neri fight. That was announced for May. My opinion on it is it's a stay busy fight for Inoue. I like Neri, but I think he's a brawler type of fighter, and that feeds right into Inoue, and Inoue will catch him with a big punch and I think knock him out rather early in that fight because Neri likes to brawl. He will come for you. He will throw punches. He's not very, to me, it's not put together well. It's kind of sloppy. Uh, I've never been super impressed with Neri. His last 3 fighters have got like 19 losses, so it's almost like you pat him up a little bit, building back up to because of his name and all that. But I think this is clearly a stay busy fight for Inoue, who's probably going to fight 3 more times again this year. Going to try to unify this division and then jump up to 126, where there's a few good fights up there for him, man. Robeisy Ramirez at 126, I think would be an amazing fight for him. Although Robeisy just lost, I still think that he's maybe got some more to offer. That would be a decent fight for him at 126 with a name. Lee Wood, if he stayed at 126, would be a tough fight. Lara, I mean, all these guys have lost, so I don't know. I feel like Inoue goes up to 126 and kind of mops through that division and unifies another division. How high can he go up? I don't know what the ceiling is. He's not a super big guy, so going up to 130, I would think would be his absolute max weight that he could possibly go up to is 130. You could be surprised in today's world, but with his size and everything, I'm thinking about 130 is his max that he'll be able to go up to at some point. But that's a fight that I'm going to tune into because Inoue is an amazing fighter. We also got Barbosa calling out Subaru Mateus, which I said this a few weeks ago that I thought that was a great fight to line up with each other. Barbosa is a great fighter who I think would bring. He's very similar to Subaru Mateus. Their style, they throw a lot of punches. They throw great combinations. They're very stay busy fighters. So I think this would be a great fight for these guys at 140, especially 2 guys wanting to make their names. If they want to put their name in a hat of, hey, I'm next, that fight against each other, I think would do that for both of these guys, bring them to the next level to where they could now be on the list of fighting Haney and Teofimo Lopez and Ryan Garcia. These guys, Rolly Ramirez, are no, not Rolly Ramirez, is it? I don't know that kid's name, but he's probably going to lose to Barossa. You know, uh, but that I think would be a hell of a fight. So I want to see if we can get that lined up. Hopefully, we can get that lined up sometime this year, maybe summertime. Get that fight going. I think it would be a great fight for both of them. Also in the news today, USA Boxing will be hosting its first national tournament in Albuquerque this year. So that'll be really awesome to see if you're in the Albuquerque area. I wouldn't mind myself getting down to check that out. I love USA Boxing. I love trying to support these young guys. A lot of good young talent. Over the summer, we got to see them in some of the national games. If you guys watch some of that, it was really cool to see. And hopefully, I'd love to get down there and check some of that out, get some video for you guys. Like I said, this is going to hopefully be a big year for me. I thought I was going to have a co-host on with me today. Hopefully, in the future, we can get him on here. I don't know what the issue was tonight. But hey, things happen. The show must go on, and I understand that. Kind of weird weather outside today, so a lot of rain, a lot of snow getting ready to come in, weather dipping down, getting cold out there. So I get it, man. People get stuck and they're not able to do it, but the show must go on. Hopefully, in the future, we'll have a co host on here. I'm hoping it's the guy that I was going to have on here tonight. Because he knows his boxing, and I'd like to team up with somebody who knows their boxing. If you're looking to be a co-host, man, jump on my show, even as a guest host, anything like that. I would love to have people on, man, especially people who know their boxing. Send me some of your information. Send me a video. Tell me a little bit about yourself, whatever, stuff like that. I'll check it out, and, we can link up through this Google Meets or whatever. I'm trying to figure all that out, too, myself, trying to figure out how to link up with people through, to where, my co-host can stay at home, drink his bourbon, hang out there, and not have to worry about driving and all that crazy stuff. Like I said, I don't condone drinking and driving, so, I'd like to be able to link up to where everybody could be safe where they're at, especially if we're going to drink some bourbon and relax and talk some boxing, all that fun stuff. And even if you're not drinking bourbon, come talk boxing with me. I'll just talk boxing with you, and I like somebody to, talk it with, give their opinion, have another opinion on the show and stuff like that. So hopefully we get that going. But like I said, I'd love to make it down to Albuquerque, check out this national tournament that's going on with USA Boxing, and get some video and stuff like that for you guys on that. But also in the news, Ja Opatia, he lands a spot on the Fury Usyk undercard. It's not been announced who he's going to fight, but we know he's going to be on there. So that's going to be probably the co-main event. I would think he's going to be the co-main event. Uh, Tell me who you guys think he's going to fight. Who is Ja Opatia? Who he's going to fight? He just blew through Zorro like he was nothing. So who's next for this guy? Who's the guy we're going to put up against him? Do you put up Demetrius Bivol against him? I think that might be a pretty good fight, guys. Uh, if Bivol wanted any of that smoke, I don't know if he does. But yeah, that's pretty much on my news. There was some other news I wanted to throw at you guys. Talk about, of course, the Garcia situation, man. What a show going on right now between his team and himself. I don't know if we've seen anything like this before, guys. I know promoters and boxers don't always get along, but this seems to be an all-out battle. They seem to hate each other. They're both going separate ways on what they want. One wants Rolly, one wants Haney, the big fight. And we know why Oscar wants that Haney fight. We know that Garcia's contract is up at the end of this year. So if he decides to fight Rolly and that fight versus Devin doesn't happen this year, it may not go under Garcia's watch. Who's going to need that money? Because he seems to be signing a lot of guys right now. And I don't know if that's money coming from Saudi, whatever, but he seems to be signing a lot of guys right now. He just saw one of his new signings lose to Barossa on last week's card on the Ortiz versus Lawson card. We saw Barossa beat Davies on that card, who was a new signing to Golden Boy. But Golden Boy also signed who did they sign? Was it Pedraza? I'm not sure. They just signed a big fighter to their thing. I can't remember. As soon as I get off here, I'll remember that guy's name. I don't know where. But next week, we're going to get a nice little ladies' fight next week. We're going to get Natasha Jones versus Michaela Mayer. And we're also going to have a Tuesday fight in Japan. I'll have to look at the names of that fight and who all is going to be on that card and get a little bit more information on that for you guys. I just know there is going to be a fight on Tuesday in Japan. I might cover that on my Monday recap show. Go ahead and cover that for you guys as a breakdown for that fight on Tuesday and get you more information on who it's going to be. Of course, it's going to be early Tuesday, probably on ESPN. It carries a lot of the fights over in Japan. And for some reason I know it's going to be a pretty good fight, a pretty good fighter who we just recently saw not long ago out of Japan. So look forward to that. But like I said, this weekend you got a big ladies fight. Jones versus Michaela Merritt is going to be a heck of a fight. These two ladies want to just destroy each other. So we're going to get to see that next Saturday. I'll break that down on my Friday recap or Friday breakdown show for you guys on YouTube, man. Once again, hopefully at this time I'll have a co-host with me, man, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more for you guys, get a little bit more into depth with some conversations that I'd like to jump into. Like I said, there was some other news that I really wanted to talk about, and I'm seeing it in my head, and I just can't think of it. But it was a fight that was possibility. I think I already talked about it. The Matias fight, of course. But I don't know. Tim Tszyu and Virgil Ortiz have been talking about possibly that has now started to come to more than just them talking. Now possibly the ball is rolling on that to get these guys in the ring versus each other at 154. Now that would be a hell of a fight. Tim Tszyu is absolutely inviting that fight to him. Now I'm sure Virgil's going to have to go over to Australia, but Tim has talked about coming to the States. I think it's time for the States to get to see Tim Tszyu a little bit, so bring him over here against one of the best, Virgil Ortiz, at 154. That would be a hell of a fight, so let's hope that happens, man. But once again, guys, thank you for joining me for another episode of Bourbon and Boxing, baby. This is episode 41. I'm your host, Jeff, man, and can't thank you guys enough for joining me. Follow me on Spotify, follow me on iHeart, Amazon Radio, and of course, tune in to me on YouTube every Friday, every Monday on my podcast for my recap. And hey, thanks once again for joining me, guys. You guys have a great night, man.